My name is Ron Carrico, and I'm with the San Diego Air and Space Museum. And I'm today with General Robert Cardenas, who was a brigadier general in the United States Air Force. He was born in 1920. He was born in Yucatan, Mexico.
Yeah.
Moved to the United States with his parents when he was 5 years old. Attended San Diego High School and San Diego State College. And thereafter, in 1938 or 39, joined the Army. Was it?
The 251st Coast Artillery National Guard, San Diego's own.
Where were you stationed?
San Diego at the National Guard here in 251st Coast Artillery.
And the Coast Artillery was supposed to shoot at incoming airplanes? Was that the idea?
I really didn't know. I was only a private in the rear ranks.
Well, somehow you got into pilot training.
Well, before I joined the National Guard, I graduated from high school in '37, went to San Diego State, joined the National Guard, and at the same time, a bunch of us kids at San Diego High School, we found out that if we went up to Torrey Pines for the glider port up there, we could make a few bucks helping the glider pilots move the gliders around and hook up the tow rope and all that. And one day while I was doing that, a guy by the name of Johnny Robinson, who was their head instructor, said, "Hey kid, you've been working hard, hop in, I'll give you a ride." So we launched off the cliff, and then he said, "Okay, now you got it, hold the stick, but hold it tightly but lightly." And I said, "I don't understand. Tightly so it don't come out of your hand, lightly enough that you can feel the nudges." I said, "The what?" He said, "The nudges. The stick in your hand is going to be hitting on certain parts of your palm. Always turn into the nudge. And if you turn into the nudges, we'll stay up here all day." He didn't explain why. On the ground, he finally told me about thermals and wing coming up, and it would nudge your hand and whatnot. Well, there you go. So that's where I learned to fly, and I really loved the flying aspect, particularly no engines in a glider. It's truly flying. I mean, the sense of floating through the air and controlling that by following the nudges. Well, so I was hooked. However, the National Guard got federalized. I think that was late '39 or '40. And the captain came in and said, "We're going to go to the Philippines as part of the Army." But Cardenas, I've been reading all the records of all the guys, and it says on your record that you've flown gliders. I said, "Yes, sir." Here's some papers. Why don't you sign up?" I said, "What is that?" He said, "That's the Army Air Corps. They're looking for pilots. You get flying experience. If you sign up for this, you'll wind up in the U.S. Army's cadet training for flying." I said, "Well, you know what, I've been flying is safe. I don't have propellers and engines and fuel tanks." And he said, "I don't give a damn, son. We're going to be looking for pilots. We're badly indeed." So I signed. I wound up the first was the PT-17 up there, the biplane. That was here in California. Trying to remember. You got to forgive my memory sometimes. Then basic training was BC-1s, and that was Texas. And then from there, AT-6s at Kelly. And then finally, there was the PT-26 pea shooter, first fighter, all-metal fighter. That was Selma, Alabama, for my final. And I learned flying, and I also learned at age 5 in San Diego, I did not know anything. I lived with, at San Diego High School, black athletes and everything. I never thought of black being a problem. I learned the hard way here at Selma, Alabama. But I also learned to fly the pea shooter.
Well, yeah, you're the first person I've talked to that flew the pea shooter. We have one at the museum, you know.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
It was a ground looping thing. When you came in to land, you had to make sure don't bounce it because it was short coupled too. But it was a good flying little airplane. It killed a couple of cadets because we'd been used to the AT-6. You could invert it 6,000 feet and do it went back, and they went right into the ground. So I graduated as a fighter pilot. The way they did that, they lined us all up, and all the little guys, you're a fighter pilot, you're a bomber pilot. There was kind of hectic in the.
So what year was that?
That would have been late 40, early 41.
So you actually graduated from pilot training prior to the war starting. You graduated from pilot training in July or something like that. Was there a class designation at that time?
If there is, probably in my records I could find. I don't remember it.
The only guy that I have interviewed that could not remember his class designation of an Air Force pilot was an astronaut.
Is that right?
The only guy. Everybody else goes, oh yeah, 42G or whatever it happened to be. So how did you end up in a B-24?
Well, gliders again. Gliders followed me.
Oh, right, that's right, I read that. You went somewhere to teach glider pilots.
No, I graduated. I'm a brand new second lieutenant.
Sure.
I don't know anything about anything. I could fly an airplane. Somebody in Washington reviewed my record, and he said, I found the guy. We need someone to open up the Army Air Corps glider school at 29 Palms, California, and here's a guy that's flown gliders. So I got orders to 29 Palms.
Oh, man.
I got there, it was a contractor school. I remember that guy, chubby little fellow, loaded with money. He had a Cadillac. We used to think of cars in those days. Anyway, I had a swimming pool, quarters, beautiful quarters. I had a hangar with a tow plane inside the hangar. I had no gliders. So I said, hey, I got a class coming in here. I got a picture of the first class that came in. But I need the gliders. Where the hell? Well, there's a colonel back at Wright Field, Materiel Command. He's supposed to be getting us. And I said, okay. He said, also, the president has appointed a glider czar. And I've made contacts with both, but I haven't got them. So, not knowing any better, I called this glider czar, and I got no time of day to call Colonel Dent at Wright Field, so I called him up. And he was kind of cold, but he said, I've been trying real hard. I said, sir, you know, if I had $5,000, I could probably get 5 gliders with instructors, sir. He said, repeat that? Where the hell are you getting the gliders with it? I said, well, I could do it. And he said, all right, I'll come out there next week. So I called Johnny Robinson, who was working on B-24s here at Consolidated. And I said, Johnny, you remember me? Oh, yeah, kid, yeah. I said, well, you know, I'm now in charge of the 29 Palms Glider School. I need gliders. I can offer 200 bucks. Now, this is 40, yeah. 200 bucks a month was good enough price. I said, I can offer that, plus all the beer they can drink, all the food, and all the flying. No restrictions. And I need 5 of them. He said, okay. So Dent landed at 29 Palms, and the gliders started streaming in 5 of them. You know. Dent stayed there. He was the first one checked out at 29 Palms.
What kind of gliders were they?
An assortment. They belonged to the guys themselves.
Mm-hmm.
There were some Schweissers, some homemade, I think.
How did you get into B-24s?
Dent got orders to go to Europe and command the 44th Bomb Group.
Who did?
Colonel Dent, the same guy I
Oh,
talked
okay.
about. Gliders followed me. Well, anyway, at Wright Field, suddenly, he borrowed me to run his section at Wilmington, Ohio, for invasion gliders. That was another thing he was involved in. Before he got orders to, I don't know if he got orders. The bomb group was the 44th Bomb Group, the 8 balls. That's the flying 8 balls.
It looked like you're a colonel there.
No, as the major was.
Oh, major. Okay, major.
Yeah. Anyway,
So what? So
he had enough faith in me. He brought me to Wright Field to develop invasion gliders. There's one up there, and that's another whole story about that glider.
what is the designation of that glider?
CG-4A, Waco, built by Waco. I told Dent when I got there, we couldn't test them at Wright Field because of the population right around them. There's 2 primary tenets of glider flying, written by God. 1, you will never know where you're going to land. Number 2, you won't know where you can stop. I told Dan, sir, there's a Waco here. The way it's designed is, you notice the front, pilot and co-pilot sit right up front. Behind them is a Jeep and a Jeep driver. And behind that, a platoon of soldiers. When they land, the Jeep driver puts it in go gear and drives straight out. As he moves forward, the nose clamshell opens. The pilot and the co-pilot are on their back.
Really?
And the Jeep goes out, and the platoon follows him. I said, sir, whoever designed this thing doesn't know a goddamn thing about glider filing. And I told him the 2 tenets. If this thing is landing in foreign soil, if it runs, I said, I did look up on the map, and the farmers in France delineate the boundaries of their farm with stone hedges. They're just the right height. If that thing runs into a stone hedge, first thing that's going to happen is going to cut the legs of the pilots at the knees. And second, you're not going to be able to get the clamshell open. You're going to be sitting there fodder for the Germans. I suggest, sir, that we use the British Horsa glider, the HORSA, Horsa glider. In that case, when they land, the pilot hits a button on his yoke and it blows the back end off, and they go out the back, so it doesn't matter if they're running the edges. And again, I'm not a very high-ranking officer at the time, but I'm really laying it into Dent that that's the time I learned as a very young officer that things go on up above where sometimes the wrong decision is made at the right time, and this was one of them. I fought it. I fought it as long as I could. I was dead set against that airplane. The British, also 6 June, when our guys hit Normandy on the beaches, we landed behind his invasion gliders. It was slaughter. Walkers were slaughtered. My heart bled for the guys.
You know, it's funny. I've heard the story that they didn't expect those delineations, and they were surprised by that. We've just heard a different story, haven't we?
Well, I wind up. Dad told me one thing when he left. He was drunk at the pissoir, and I said, "God damn it! You know, you raised me from a pup, General Colonel, and now you're going to leave me. I'm sitting here without you." He said, "Well, look, if you ever get to England, I'll get you in my bomb group." I hadn't flown a bomber really yet, but I could fly most everything. Well, I take it back. At Wright Field, in the test section, I had done structural integrity tests on the B-17 and the B-24. So anyway,
What does that mean?
Huh?
What's structural integrity testing?
In those days, it was basically followed. The engineers would put a car. You'd go at a certain altitude, certain power settings, and then you'd dive at getting up to certain speeds, and then pull up as strong as you could. Usually 2 pilots, and they had gauges and all on wings and stuff.
How many G's could you pull?
With the B-24, it was pretty hard to pull even 2 Gs,
Right.
because it had a high force. B-17 was a pussycat kind of airplane. The 24 took a lot to manhandle it.
Which was the better, between the two of them, which was the better airplane, you think?
B-17 could withstand more damage. In other words, if you were going into a highly fortified area, really highly fortified, I would elect the B-17. There wasn't much difference. The B-24 had a longer range. Basically, the Davis wing gave it aerodynamically a better airplane, so it could go faster and longer than the B-17.
And you're talking 220, 210, something like that, airspeed?
Yeah.
Okay.
So depending on the target, if I was the ops officer, I would use B-17s. They both carried about the same load.
Did they actually, because I've always wondered about that, did they use different B-24 versus B-17 in different missions, or did they just, no, I didn't think so.
Yeah, nobody paid attention.
Well, they lost so many of them. God, they
Yeah.
lost
Yeah,
30,000 men or something like
yeah,
that.
oh yeah.
So now, but then where did you check out in the B-24?
At Wright Field in test, flight test. But I didn't go to him because he had 24s. I just followed him.
Right.
Anyway, he had told me if I got to England, he'd get me. So one day, there was a requirement to fly some test equipment from Wright Field to Boscombe Downs in England, their test base. And when you go across the Atlantic, you always need 3 pilots. So I volunteered 3rd pilot to go to England. When I got to England, I jumped ship. I went down to personnel in London and said, "There's a Colonel Dent here. He has the 44th Bomb Group, and he would like me to have me in his bomb group. Let me have your orders." I said, "Well, this is all I got. TDY orders to fly."
Wow.
He's got Dent on the phone. He said, "I don't know, sir. I have a young captain here. Says you want him in there." And he said, "Cardenas." I said, "Give me the phone." So he gave me the phone. He said, "Cardenas, what the hell are you doing?" I said, well, sir, you know, one thing you taught me, you raised me from a pup. You taught me the word of a senior officer is his bond. And you said, I know what you said. You said, but bitch. He gave the phone back. I don't know what they did. I wound up assigned to
So
the
which unit did you up in?
44th Bomb Group.
44th Bomb Group.
Yeah. I think shipped to Air Base in Norwich, home of the 44th Bomb Group.
Mm-hmm. Can I take a picture of that?
Sure.
Oh, you've been back there.
Yeah. No, not after the war, no.
Well, somebody must have sent you a picture of it then.
Yeah. The guy that signed it.
Yeah, Rudbury, Ridgeway.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, isn't that sad? I mean, it's sad to see these places like that these days. But on the other hand, you know, I talked to another fellow I talked to was a navigator. This was really funny. His daughter set it up, and so he was a nav, trained and picked up their B-24 in San Diego, flew to about halfway across the country, stopped overnight. Someone says, we got to get, we need some nose art.
Some what?
Nose art.
Oh.
So nobody knew how to, but anyway, they elected him, and so he did a nose art, and he, you know, well, it's Vargas girls type things, and and the painting was after they named it Little Girl, which was the girlfriend of the aircraft commander's girlfriend, right? So they get shot down on the 5th or 6th mission there, and he said, so we never, you know, that nose art never survived, and I was actually sitting next to, I had a really bad cold, so I was asking somebody else to ask the questions, and I looked on my phone and I found a picture of Little Girl that he hadn't seen since he put it on there in 1943. And I showed it to him on my phone, and he about fainted. I said, is that her there? He went, oh my God, how did you do that? He said. So anyway, so now you're fully checked out in the B-24, and
I got there, and he was pissed. I caused him a lot of problem, but when I reminded him.
Did you go in as an aircraft commander or co-pilot or?
Well, he said, I want to. You caused me a lot of problems because I had to pull a lot of things to get you here. But I have a crew that just finished their 15th mission with the co-pilot holding the body of the pilot because he had his head blown off. And they reasonably so are scared to death. They don't want to fly anymore. And I don't want to court-martial them. I know what you can do with a B-24. I'm going to give you that crew. And with that crew, they've already got 15, so you only have to fly 10 and they can go home. So I had one training mission with them as pilot, and I showed them what the plane could do. And
Was there any, okay, now, is there any, let me see if I can recreate this. So these missions that you went on, now we're talking 1943, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and these are large formations.
I went down 18 March 1944.
Okay, so the missions would take off one at a time with 30-second spacing or so?
Yeah, and circled throughout England on forming up. So you'd have maybe, I don't know, 100 of them up there at one time.
And just gradually climbing. And
Climb
then
and circle till you got in formation.
And then
It's a formation of 3, you know, 3 ships, and then those 3 are another 3 underneath, and so forth.
well, that box formation thing was, I think, with 9 ships altogether, I believe, something like that.
Yeah.
And so were you stuck with Tail End Charlie in those days?
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, so on my first mission, that was my first and their 16th. And I got them, I finished them. When they finished their 25, of course I had 10. the thing that hit my heart, I'll tell you, the feeling you don't, you can't get except in time of war, I guess. At the officers' club, the navigator from the crew came over to see me, and he said, Captain, we've taken a crew vote, including the enlisted men, and we want to finish you out. I said, it's stupid. Thank you, but you already got 25. You can go home. They didn't figure those statistics out just out of the air, you know. They counted how many have been lost. Well, we don't care. You finished us out when we needed you. We're going to finish you out.
Oh my God.
Of course, I told that. He said, I can't order them not to. So I started flying with that crew. And the name of the ship was Glamorous Glennis.
Really?
Yeah, of all things later, yeah. But,
Well, that is a coincidence.
yeah. On the 20th mission, I'd already flown 5 with them. And I told them before I went on my 20th mission, because I was not with my regular crew, that I had flown enough missions that I was now command pilot rated. In every block, there was a command ship that had an extra seat between the pilot and the co-pilot. And the command pilot sat in that seat. And you had in your lap all the maps, alternate targets, radio frequencies, classified stuff. And one of the last things a command pilot does, if you know you're going down, no sweat. You went down to Bombay, the Bombay doors are open anyway, and you shred the classified stuff, just small pieces you can, throw them out. I was down there on my 20th, shredding the classified, and our target was Friedrichshafen. No, it was heavily defended, really bad. We lost 9 and 9 is 18. We lost 12 birds on that one target. It's right near Switzerland.
What date would that be?
18 March 1944.
And Friedrichshafen is north or south?
No, I'm not sure of that.
Well, you ended up in Switzerland, right? You
Well,
ended up in Switzerland.
when I went down to shred, I already knew the ship was going to go down. We had 2 engines on the right side on fire, and the wing had about a 5-degree dihedral to it. So I told the pilot, you keep flying straight ahead, Switzerland, get over Switzerland. I didn't tell them to bail out. I said, just head for Switzerland. They did. They crashed. They bailed out and crashed in Switzerland. And my B-24 crash in Switzerland now has a museum built by the Swiss with regard to that particular mission. And
Well, everybody bailed out.
yeah,
And everybody was okay?
yep.
Wow.
Everybody came home.
Everybody came home.
Yeah.
So now, did you actually land in Switzerland?
No. I landed on the north shore, south shore, south, of the Bodensee.
Also,
Target actually was Ravensburg, or, well, it wasn't that town, it was a factory right here. Anyhow.
did they hit the target?
Oh yeah, we obliterated it. It was an armaments factory. It was not an aircraft factory, it was armaments. I remember that, it was important to knock out.
So, now wasn't there a difference between landing your airplane in Switzerland, and
Oh.
what was the difference between parachuting in?
No, Switzerland is surrounded by Germany.
Right.
At the heights of the war, I found out one thing when I got shot down. I land on the German side of the Bodensee. As a teenager, I used to swim in La Jolla 3-mile rough water swim. So I see the German trucks this way and the lake that way. I figured, no sweat, shit, I can. I did not know at the time that the buoyancy factor of fresh water is only about a third of that of seawater. Number one, and number two, it was going to be icy cold.
Yeah.
Even in March, it was icy. So about maybe a quarter of a mile or so, I know the feeling of drowning and dying. The first thing that happens is you stroke. So then you begin desperate battling, and all of a sudden something happens in your brain, I think, and you have the feeling that you're floating on the air above the water. Just about that time, Hook, a Swiss fisherman, was pulling me towards his boat, and got me in his boat, and then he took me to Switzerland.
You probably had hypothermia too.
Yeah. Oh, in Switzerland, the farms, the houses on the farms are right in the center of a rectangular cube like that. They have in the center this huge white ceramic block that goes from the floor to the ceiling, and inside is an oven, and they use that to heat the house, and it has a ledge around the end where you lay on it. They laid me on that, and it was there when I was waking up. I saw his eldest son walking by, and he had a rifle on there, and I thought, oh boy. So I asked him about the rifle. He said, here in Switzerland, everyone of age must serve 2 years in the army, and after he serves his 2 years, then he becomes civilian again, but when he leaves, he takes all his weapons with him. I found out later in a conversation we didn't have an ambassador in Switzerland. But anyhow, he said that's why the Germans have never invaded Switzerland. The day they would declare war with Switzerland, they would be looking at 11 million men trained and armed. And that's why the Germans never went in, which leads me back to Dubendorf Airport in Switzerland. Airplanes, B-17s and B-24s, whether they took off from Africa or they took off from England, if they knew they could not get back to their home base or nearby Allied base, they would land at Dubendorf Airport in Switzerland. And that impacted on me later, but there were about 40 B-24s and B-17s, part damaged to some degree. There were rumors that some were not. I was involved in that later. In my case, I was in Switzerland, picked up by the Swiss Army or force, and taken to 3 internment camps: Davos-Platz for officers, Adelboden for enlisted men, and there was a third called Wielermoos. I have pictures of Wielermoos, and the camp commander, a former Nazi colonel. I was a captain in, I was put in charge of Adelboden, the enlisted troops. Adelboden and Davos they had been in peacetime resort areas, so there was no complaint. Wheelermoose, anyway, why I got to Wheelermoose was the Swiss.
Love gliders.
Huh?
They love gliders.
Well, no, it's just that the Swiss had sent a message back to Washington that they were concerned that the Germans could only stand so much neutrality out of Switzerland, that they might go in there and start laying a string of bombs at Dubendorf. And Dubendorf was their outlet to the outer world. And so they had asked Washington to send repair crews and a test pilot to test them out after repair. And the answer they got from Washington, repair crews on the way as far as the test pilot, unless our records are wrong, you already have him. Captain Cardenas has tested both of those. So I had met a young lady up in the Alps who had asked me and Captain Stoltz if we wanted to get out and go back home. And we had said yes, so she had been planning something. But when this happened, I had to stay there. And that's when the Swiss knew I was the guy. Then suddenly now I got a car and a driver. Swiss car, Swiss driver.
What were you doing for a uniform?
Huh? Well, I have a picture in my Army.
So what your uniform?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So one thing I requested of the Swiss, I'll be glad to do this, but I want to have my driver take me down to Wheelermoose. I want to talk to the boys. And I've got pictures. It was just as bad as any Stahlgruft in Germany. Like I said, I have a picture of it.
So they wanted to visit your own enlisted crew members?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Well, our officers, because there were officers down there. This is not Adelboden, this is Wheelermoose.
Yeah.
The bad boys. The Swiss called them bad boys. They would go down to Wheelermoose. Anyway, but as soon as I finished checking out, one of the things I testing the airplanes, but also checking out Swiss pilots so they could fly them up to their mountain airports and get them away from the Germans. So I checked out the Swiss, and finally when I got through checking them out.
How did you know you were supposed to do that? Did you get some sort of orders from the Army Air Corps?
I mentioned we had no ambassador.
Right.
We had one guy who was, what did they call him, Secretary General or something. And I got all my orders in Switzerland from him. Okay. American.
Right.
Non-military, civilian of some kind. And the Swiss Air Force was cooperating with me because I was doing a job for them.
Sure, right.
So finally, when I finished checking them out, Stoltz and I contacted that gal again. We didn't know it, but 6th June, when the guys hit the beaches of Normandy in the invasion or whatnot, we contacted her.
So you'd been there?
March, April, May, June. We'd been there about 3 months.
Okay.
Then she actually was some way connected with the French underground.
Right.
So she got us out of Switzerland from Geneva. In Geneva, there's 2 sets of tracks. One goes through in Geneva and the other goes out. And so she had a cafe that was in the bottom of that one station. So she got us in a freight car, and we went out, headed out, and she said 2 hours and 45 minutes jump. And she jumped with us.
You said us. Who were the other person?
Hmm?
Who was your other? Who was
Captain Stoltz.
Captain Stoltz.
Mm-hmm.
And was he the pilot? Was with you on the?
No, totally not connected to that part, no.
How'd you happen to be with him though?
Oh, he was also he was at Davos Platz, but that same gal that we had met skiing.
Right.
Anyway,
So where were you at 2 hours and 45 minutes?
Grenoble, France. And we got picked up by the French underground.
The Maquis.
Yeah.
They were called the Maquis, I believe. Yeah. And where'd they take you?
We were running around several places. I have seen the sewers of Paris. And the other place where the Germans wouldn't enter was the Muslim mosque in Paris. Beautiful building. The Muslim mosque in Paris. They wouldn't enter.
So you hid there.
In and out, around. It was exciting and interesting. Anyway, we finally were told to go down to the south of France, and blacked out Goonie bird. It landed in there at our farm at night, and there were about 15 of us climbed on aboard, and we got out.
In an airplane.
Yeah, back out of the States.
Yeah, when would that be?
Well, to England first, and then to the States.
When was that?
June and July, August.
Well, you were running around for quite a while then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was comical at times.
So when you get back to the States, now did you go to Wright Field right away, or you went some training someplace else?
The higher headquarters said, what this guy's been through, obviously he must be damaged in some way. So I wound up at Santa Monica Rehabilitation Center, where all the doctors had a look at me and whatnot. And it was from there that I made a call back to Wright Field. I've forgotten that guy's name. I had met him before. He was a personnel guy. And so I was initially sent, the higher headquarters were dead set checking me out. So from the rehab center, I went to Texas for further medical evaluation, and then back to Wright Field. And that's where I started getting to fly the Newbergs.
So you get
Flight Test Division.
So you get to the Wright Field sometime in early '45.
Yeah, Colonel Boyd.
Okay, and then when did the airplanes? They came on a ship, right? Those airplanes they got from the Germans, they all came on a ship.
Yeah, how he got them, Walton's Wizards.
I think that was the name. Yeah.
It comes to me, my memory.
Yeah. Before I forget, there's a place called Freeman Field in Indiana.
Yeah.
And in October of '45, there was a big air show, and they showed they flew a lot of the German airplanes in that air show. And there's black and white film on the internet you can see of them flying these airplanes, plus American airplanes too. And I just wondered if you were involved in that.
I don't think so. All the flights that I made of the ME and the Arado were at Wright Field. I didn't fly them any other.
Well, let's talk about flying the ME-262. What was it like to fly?
Typical of the Germans, everything was pretty methodically placed. So of course, I had checkout book that I had studied what to turn on, how, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember all of it now. But takeoff, we had plenty of runway, and you didn't need too much. And the Arado was a surprise with increased how soon that, how quick that thing was to take off. I really loved it. I loved that Arado. The Messerschmitt had to be very short range because you couldn't fly it too long. It very short range airplane, about 400 kilometers or so.
They had the same engines though, didn't they?
I think so, yeah.
I think they call it the UMO, UMO, I believe.
I didn't get into detail. I didn't.
You also flew the P-59, correct?
Yeah.
And what was it like compared the P-59 to the ME-262?
ME-262 was way ahead of it.
Oh, wait, okay.
In terms of control, stability, and just airworthiness, really.
Did the P-59, did you fly it at Muroc or did you fly it at Wright?
Muroc.
Now I gotta ask a funny. I want to ask if this is true. Okay. There's stories of people flying the P-59, and then coming up or engaging with other American prop-driven airplanes in 1945. And when they would get up next to him, there was apparently a guy that had a gorilla mask he would put on.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Was it you?
Not me. No.
Who did that?
I heard the story. I don't know. I've heard the story, and I've been asked if I wore that mask. No. When we flew the 59, when I flew the 59, a little model up there, it was all at, most all of it was at Edwards.
Yeah. Now so back to
Muroc.
Yeah, well, back to Wright.
Mm-hmm.
When did it become Wright-Patterson, or not? What's it called?
It was Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Who was Patterson?
I don't know. But most of my work was out of Muroc.
Okay.
Before it became Edwards.
But so yeah, and you flew and you think you would have preferred the Arado over the 262? Oh, but they were different. The Arado didn't have guns on it, did it?
No, well, yeah. With that periscope, it was a dive bomber. You could use that dive bomber on the periscope, and it had two guns, 20 millimeter cannon up front, and one facing backwards.
Really?
Yeah. They lost a lot of Spitfires that way. The Spit would, up at altitude, the Spit would come up behind it to shoot it down. You just triggered that gun. It was a 30 millimeter cannon pointed backwards.
Oh, wow. I didn't know they were in combat that much, the Arado.
Well, I don't know if they were used that much, but that was what they were designed to make. Well, they first designed in the Arado was just a wooden ski.
Right.
They felt since the wings, they could use a skid, and I didn't fly it with the skid. And then they went from the skid to the wheel. It was a progressive. So the final Arado 234 was a beautiful airplane.
Did they? Now it had two people in it, right? It had a. It wasn't a single pilot airplane, was it?
As far as flying this single pilot,
Yeah.
There was another crew member back in the back.
Right. Yeah.
He took care of that cannon back there.
Oh, okay. And then, but when we recovered them, when Walton or whoever it was recovered them, didn't they get them from Norway or somewhere and had to fly them down to?
I don't know.
Yeah. There was some weird story about how they got them. Well, they had to get a German to teach them how to fly the thing.
We had, I don't know where they got them, but we had a little book,
Was there a German pilot that would?
handbook.
I thought that German pilot came to the United States with the airplane.
He may have, and they produced copies because mine was in English, not in German.
So how many times did you fly it?
The ME-262 was about 3 flights. The Arado, about 3 or 4. That's all.
Did you fly to the other airplanes like the Focke-Wulf or the Messerschmitt?
No,
Oh.
I didn't have a choice. I was told what to do.
What was the point of flying them anyway?
Gather data, verify handbook, I guess. Also to get our opinion, you know. I would, an ME-262, I would be glad to tangle with or advanced fighters we had then, and but recognizing where you were taking off from, where you were engaging the enemy, it couldn't be more than about 200 kilometers out.
Right.
So it was not a good area of fighter.
When you were flying the
Like the P-38 could go way deep and be
Right.
used, but it wasn't. The P-38 was not maneuverable like the 262.
Any idea how many G's you could pull in the 262?
The highest I ever got was 3.
Really? Now in the B-24, were you ever attacked by fighters flying the B-24?
You mean there?
In combat, yeah, in combat.
Well, the day we got shot down, ME-262s did the job.
Oh, really? They got your airplane?
The flak is what threw me out of the bomb bay.
Oh, I see.
Burst right near the ship. The impact. That was flak, but the ME-262s shot us up pretty bad.
How'd they?
The 20 millimeter cannon that they had up front was a very deadly weapon.
So on that particular mission, you were, as I recall reading, you actually made the run and made the drop anyway, right?
Second pass. Should never do.
You did a second pass, really? Oh Jesus!
We had to get that factory down and out.
So you did a B-360 in the sky to.
Yeah.
How many?
And the nose art on that one was called Sack Artists.
Huh.
I have a picture of it if you ever want to look at it.
I just remember reading about General Travis, and I think his first B-24 mission, I don't know which unit he was in, but he sat in the right seat, and they were hitting someplace way south in Germany, and they got there and it was clouded over. So with 300 airplanes, they did a 360. And nothing to see. They did another three. They did 3 360s and lost 60 airplanes.
You give that guy on the ground with advanced flak guns a second pass, he's got you covered.
So when your airplane got hit, you actually got hit by a 20 millimeter from a 262.
The right wing had been pretty well shot up.
Where did he come from?
The 262s?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, forward, advanced, up and down. Or...
Oh. They generally, I think they enjoyed coming up because they knew that the B-24 had 2 guns up here and some side guns.
G model.
Yeah. they just dived down. They were faster, so they just come up and just riddle you.
So they come from a left or right quarter,
Yeah.
and then pull up and then do a Immelman sort of thing.
Right over you. Yeah.
Wow. So, but in that particular situation, you probably couldn't see out very well because you were in the center anyway.
Yeah, down the Bombay.
Mm.
Well, prior to that, I was in that middle seat during most of the flight.
Were you in the lead airplane of the whole formation?
No, they don't put you out in lead. They put you out. The lead ship, there's one there. You're down right here.
Did the navigator drop off of his sight, or did he drop off the guy in front of him? Pickle the bombs off, I mean.
From the, again, the command ship is not the lead ship.
Right.
You're buried in the thing. So you're bombing from the lead ship.
So when he drops, you wait.
You go.
You're gonna hit something. Well, the stories about the Norden bomb sight are just, drop a bomb in a pickle barrel from 10,000.
Flying with that crew, and the name of the ship was Glamorous Glennis.
Really?
Yeah, of all things later, yeah. But,
Well, that is a coincidence.
yeah. Yeah, I think it was. But anyhow, on the 20th mission, I'd already flown 5 with them. And I told them before I went on my 20th mission, because I was not with my regular crew, that I had flown enough missions that I was now command pilot rated. In every block, there was a command ship that had an extra seat between the pilot and the co-pilot. And the command pilot sat in that seat. And you had in your lap all the maps, alternate targets, radio frequencies, classified stuff. And one of the last things a command pilot does, if you know you're going down, no sweat. You went down to Bombay, the Bombay doors are open anyway, and you shred the classified stuff, just small pieces you can, throw them out. I was down there on my 20th, shredding the classified, and our target was Friedrichshafen. No, it was heavily defended, really bad. We lost 9 and 9 is 18. We lost 12 birds on that one target. It's right near Switzerland.
What date would that be?
18 March 1944.
And Friedrichshafen is north or south?
No, I'm not sure of that.
Well, you ended up in Switzerland, right? You
Well,
ended up in Switzerland.
when I went down to shred, I already knew the ship was going to go down. We had 2 engines on the right side on fire, and the wing had about a 5-degree dihedral to it. So I told the pilot, you keep flying straight ahead, Switzerland, get over Switzerland. I didn't tell them to bail out. I said, just head for Switzerland. They did. They crashed. They bailed out and crashed in Switzerland. And my B-24 crash in Switzerland now has a museum built by the Swiss with regard to that particular mission.